All these priests were convicted of sexually abusing children.
I couldn't tell anybody about it. He told me that I wouldn't be believed. That he was the priest and that his word would be law.
All around the world, the Catholic Church is besieged over the issue of sexual abuse by priests. And Britain hasn't escaped. In the past decade, more than 20 priests have been convicted for sexual offences in England alone. But the Catholic Church in Britain is said to lead the way in taking action against paedophile priests. We wanted to put that reputation to the test.
The Catholic Church in England and Wales claims it's cracked down hard on child abuse. It promised that action would be taken to dismiss offenders from the priesthood. But a Channel 4 News investigation has discovered that many of those jailed for committing serious sexual offences against children still remain members of the clergy.
10 years ago, one of Britain's most senior judges, the late Lord Nolan, was asked by the Church to lead a committee on how it should deal with the issue of sexual abuse by its priests. One of Nolan's key recommendations was that any priest sentenced to a year or more in jail for child abuse should usually face the sack. The committee said, in church speak, that it would normally be right to initiate the process of laicisation. Dr. Margaret Kennedy campaigns for victims of clerical abuse. She believes that dismissing paedophile priests from the church sends a vital message both to victims and to abusers.
Imprisonment is the secular world's punishment. Laicisation is the spiritual world's punishment, and they've got to have both.
Until a priest is laicized, the church has special responsibility to provide him with financial support and housing. Until 2 years ago, the man who was head of the body responsible for implementing Nolan's new rules was the Most Reverend Vincent Nichols, who now leads the 5 million Catholics in England and Wales.
To those who have suffered abuse, those who have felt ignored, disbelieved or betrayed, there can be no excuses.
But those words ring pretty hollow to Luke Holland. He was abused when he was an altar boy at this West London church.
It first started in the house attached to the church there. He took me up to his room and made me perform a sex act on him. And this went on for the next 4 years.
How old were you?
I was 10 when it started. Parents couldn't deal with me. I became unruly. I started getting into drink and drugs at a really early age, just to try and block stuff out.
And you blame a lot of that on what happened to you?
I blame all of it on it. The thing in your mind that never goes away. I'm still taking antidepressants now daily.
After a trial in 2005, Father John Coughlin finally received a 15-month jail sentence for abusing Luke Holland. But we've discovered that he's still listed as a priest. This is the 2010 Catholic Directory, and in it lists every single priest in England and Wales. Return to page 702. It actually lists Father John Coughlin. In fact, it gives him his official title, Monsignor John Coughlin, which signifies that the church holds him in particular high esteem. We tracked down Father Coughlin to his house north of London. He didn't want to appear on camera, but he described his position as being in limbo and said he was in touch with other priests in a similar situation. Father Coughlin may no longer take part in active ministry, but we've discovered that not only is he still listed as a priest, he's also living in a property owned by the Diocese of Westminster, which is run by Archbishop Vincent Nichols.
It's absolutely outrageous. It's outrageous. It's a kick in the teeth to me, isn't it? You know, why did I bother exposing him for what he is?
He's not actually taking mass or anything like that. I mean,
he's still being supported by the church.
It is crucially important that a victim knows that the priest who abused them is no longer a priest. The victim then knows that he doesn't have status or power, and for the victim, the fact that the priest has been laicized means that the church is taken it very seriously.
In response, the church said that for reasons of data protection, they were unable to comment on individual cases, but added that any priest being investigated for an offence against a child is removed from active ministry, and following conviction, restrictions would still be in place. It remains unclear why John Coughlin is still listed as a priest 5 years after being convicted of child abuse. but we've discovered that his case is not unique.
How many priests have been jailed for sexual
We
abuse?
checked with church authorities around the country. We found that a total of 22 priests have been jailed for a year or more for sexual abuse since 2001, when Nolan's report was published.
And whether they've been laicised or not. And we sent him a letter a few days ago. And
To date, only 8 have been dismissed.
So in 2001, the church promised to crack down on child abuse. But since then, it has failed to dismiss the majority of priests jailed for serious sexual offences against children. At least 14 of them remain members of the clergy.
The church confirmed to Channel 4 News that of those 14 priests, 6 applications for dismissal are currently underway. 1 further decision to pursue dismissal has been made. 3 dismissals have been either rejected by Rome or not pursued due to acute ill health. In 4 cases, no application has been made, but the priests are subject to risk management in the community. The church added that application of policy is entirely consistent with the spirit of the Nolan recommendations. Academic Philip Gilligan has been trying to find out more about how the church has dealt with convicted priests. He says the delay in dealing with them is unacceptable.
We've been told for almost 10 years that that is what will happen. We need to be able to trust that they will do what they say they're going to do.
Then we went further back into the records. We found a priest who was sentenced to 3 years in jail in 1997. That's well before the Nolan report, after admitting a string of assaults on boys at a boarding school. But Father James Channing Pierce is still listed as a priest at a religious community in Wales. His religious order, the Jesuits, told us that he has not engaged in any public ministry since 1997. Cases like this are even more puzzling, given that the present Pope brought in a new fast-track procedure for dismissing priests almost 10 years ago.
Can be done tomorrow, but there is a real willingness to try and ease the pain and suffering of victims. But that's not the agenda. It's to support the priests, so they have to wait a very long time, and it's cruel.
As for the length of time it appears to take to dismiss priests, the Church said a bishop has to apply to Rome for a priest to be laicized, and neither the duration nor the outcome of the application is in the bishop's control.
But Channel 4 News has made another discovery. Despite the growing anger about child abuse in the church, the rules regarding abusive priests have been quietly relaxed.
And it's priests convicted of the most serious offences that the rule change could affect. Nolan said that if they've been jailed for a year or more for sexual abuse, it should normally be right for them to face dismissal. But under the new rules, dismissal for these serious offenders only needs to be considered.
I'm told that these are not changes, these are translation and finessing.
Would you describe these rule changes as finessing?
I certainly wouldn't. This is a major change to the recommendations that were made by Lord Nolan. I'm very angry that the rules have been watered down without any public announcement, without any clear justification for that.
Isn't it better for the church to keep these priests inside the church rather than kicking them out and maybe allowing them to potentially abuse again?
I think you have to face the fact that the church has a very poor track record historically in dealing with priests it knows to offend against children. It's not the job of the church to monitor offenders. That's the job of the Police and Probation Service.
But what about when you hear Archbishop Nichols publicly apologise and say, the Catholic Church is now dealing with this issue?
Well, it's not dealing with it, is it? It's still looking after the perpetrators of the abuse, isn't it? They say one thing in public and do whatever they please in private. And they've always done that, and they always will do that until somebody gets a grip of them.
In response, the Church referred us to its record on taking action against priests and reiterated that its policy was entirely consistent with the spirit of the Nolan recommendations. With regard to its continued support for some convicted priests, the Church said that minimisation of future risk can be helped by individuals having access to accommodation and supervision within the Church. The Catholic Church in England and Wales claims to have learned important lessons from the child abuse scandal. But with paedophile priests still in the clergy, victims question the Church's willingness to punish all those guilty of the most serious crimes.